Thank you, Peter. So for the people that have just arrived, we're conducting this meeting from the Rare Aviation Bookshop, which is claimed to be the only specialist rare education bookshop in the world, and it's in the Rocks in Sydney, and it's well worth visiting, and it's run by Marshall Silver, and seeing as it's now 10:59, I'd like to officially, on behalf of Paul Ewald, the President, welcome you to this meeting, Marshall, and I will mute myself now and leave it all to you. So thank you, Marshall.
Thank you all for inviting me, and Tom for organizing the session. I've been a member of AHSA for a number of years, and it's a pleasure to talk to you about rare aviation books. As Tom said, we are the only exclusive aviation bookshop in the world. We have 2,000 titles online, and some of the more interesting books are here in the shop in the Rocks in Sydney. You're all welcome to come in. If you come around lunchtime, we'll go to one of 6 pubs, which are within 3 or 4 minutes walk of my shop. We're in a very historic building. We're in one of the buildings that was built in 1902. After they killed all the rats in the plague. Here's our building here. This is what it looked like in 1902. And this is what it looks like today, except for this little detail here, which was knocked down by a cart and horse and some wool bales. It's exactly like it was in 1902. Our shop is here in the Rocks, but we also have a storage facility in Camperdown with 2,000 books, and many of our books are online, but we catalog all the time. You're all welcome to come. Today we're going to talk about 2 things: how to collect books, and number 2, key books and historical time frames. We're going to talk about distinctions of cataloging, what to look for when buying, and then I've broken up the time span into various eras so that we can look at what we believe are important books to use and to collect. I will not be talking very much about the history of the people who wrote the books or the flowing that they did. You are all much more competent than I am in this. What we will be talking about are how to buy the books that document the historical activities that you are writing and researching about. The managing director is Marshall Silver. I have a long history of technical activities. I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering in the United States. You can tell from my accent, I'm either Canadian or American. I'm American. I have a PhD in Geotechnical Engineering and Earthquake Engineering from University of California, Berkeley. I was a professor of engineering for 25 years in the United States before I went with the United Nations, where I was in charge of disaster management and water resources in South Asia and Southeast Asia. I actually was hired to rebuild the dams and dikes that were bombed during what we call in Vietnam, the American War. After my work with the United Nations, we started a company, Geotech International, with offices in Singapore, Australia, Vietnam, and Laos. I am a registered pilot with about 800 hours. And I've been buying and selling aviation books for about 40 years. Here's some of the field work that our company does. This is an Australian, our company does work for all the Australian mining companies that have mines in Southeast Asia. And here's some of our staff in the Hanoi office. How do you collect aviation books? The distinctions that when you're looking for a book are the following to look at: the edition and the printing. Is it a first edition or a reprint? And is it the first printing or multiple printing? The aviation books historically have been low print runs. So as soon as they sold the first 500, they would reprint them. So you have a lot of reprints or second, third, and fourth printings. I've seen up to 12 printings of a first edition. Look at the place of publication. There's usually an English first edition and an American first edition or an Australian first edition. Some people like to collect all, some people only collect where they believe the first publication was. We recommend you look for dust strappers. Aviation dust strappers, aviation book dust strappers are excellent. They really are well done. And without the dust wrapper, we feel that the book is not as interesting for collectors. There's nothing wrong with having a book without the dust wrapper, of course, if it's a reading copy. But if you're collecting, look for dust wrappers. Condition is important. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I would say that 20% of the books that we buy get sent directly to salvos. They're not sellable. And 50% of the remainder are not worth very much. You're always looking for good condition books. Scarce versus rare. If you look at a catalog, half the books will be scarce and a quarter of the books will be rare. Forget that. A scarce book is something you see once every 2 or 3 years. A rare book is a book you may not see for 10 years or even 20 years, or you've never seen it. You've heard about it, but you've never seen it ever. And be careful of pagination. There's a lot of books where the plates loose and have fallen out. And a book that has incomplete plates or has missing pages is, for a collector, is basically worthless. What are you going to look for when you buy an aviation book? Okay, when you buy a house, it's location, location, location. When you buy a book, buy it for condition, condition, condition. Australian books are terrible. The climate in Australia seems to eat books alive. So you're probably better off buying outside Australia unless they've been kept in a humidity controlled place. Do your homework. Dust wrappers add, as we said before, add important value to a book, and most of our books have dust wrappers. And we always put our dust wrappers in archival film so that they don't chip and they don't lose their value with time. If you're a real collector, look for first editions versus later editions and printing. This takes a little bit of an eye to understand, but most aviation books were low print runs. So a first edition can be very hard to find, but later editions are not that bad. Bibliographies are quite important and they're hard to find. Try to collect as many as you can if you want to be a collector. McLaren has 5 or 6 Australian aviation bibliographies. I've only been able to find 2 or 3 of them. they don't come up. Dornbush, who is very famous for doing squadron histories, has done some Australian military bibliographies. Smith has World War I in the air. Cyril Falls for war books, World War I, and other bibliographers. These are a key to your collection. Let's start by talking about some different books and eras. We feel that the earliest Australian aviation book is from Bland in about 1866. His Atmotic, I always thought this was the atomic aircraft. I said, wow, 1866, he was building an atomic airplane. No, it's Atmotic. It's a steam-driven airship. And there are 3 or 4 broadsides available in the libraries, a very, very scarce item. Then there's a number of books that you might be interested in early history, such as navigation books. Here's one from 1894 by Salverda. A nice book, quite technical. And we always have a large selection of technical books from our engineering background. All of my catalogers are all graduate engineers, either aerospace engineers or civil engineers. So we always like the technical things. Don't forget Hargrave. His transactions from the Australian scientific journals are very difficult to get, and they're always bid up quite high. This is a small summary from the Technical Museum in Sydney, and it's a nice summary of his work. And whenever you can get Hargrave, go ahead and do it, and you'll probably outbid me. Ballooning. We have a large collection of ballooning, and it's a nice specialty. This is Andre and his balloon. Unfortunately, he used it to try to get to the North Pole, and he didn't make it. And they found he and his collaborators only in the 1930s. This was in 1898. Typical believing in technology, he didn't test the balloon before he tried to reach the North Pole. An interesting book, and just a sample of ballooning, and we have hundreds of ballooning books. Aviation history, before this I said early history, but this is, we start with Orville and Wilbur Wright. They never published anything. Very interesting. People wrote about them. Here, how we invented the airplane. This was discovered in the 50s in the U.S. Library of Congress as a transcript of a patent case where they went to court to show that they had invented the airplane. This is a very nice little book. We have several copies. After that, you get people who are writing about the Wrights. Here's a little book from the Aeronautical Journal of England in 1916, where it was a reprint of the research and the life and work of the Wrights. Tom was talking before we came on about the history of the Australian airmails. This is a little book that we have from Tom, and you see the jug, you see the Dewar's jug. I had one and I didn't know what it was, and Tom told me it celebrated it's a water flask, of course, and it celebrated the early flight of the first airmail. We have one for sale. Tom's got one, and we have another one. Try to get as many Janes All the World's Aircraft as you can. We have in stock first editions of 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. The 1919, if you can't get the original, which forget about it, I haven't seen one for sale for 15 years, but if you can get one, get the reprint. It's quite nice. This is the original, and that's the reprint. And if you're interested in World War II, be sure to get a copy of the 1945-46 James. That was after the war, and that lists all of the aircraft that were under security and could not be, the details could not be published during the war. There's a reprint of this, but the original volumes are not that expensive. We have 200 Janes, all the world's aircraft in stock. We can get you most volumes at fair prices, except the 1919 is going to cost you. That's rare. If you're interested in Australian aviation and military, we recommend all of the Defense Department publications, for example, the Centenary History of Defense, the Air Force by a volume by Stevens is good. We always keep sets of these for sale. You can find odd volumes, but difficult to find, for example, the Atlas. So this should be a book or a set of books that you know about and can reference. British Aviation, Brooks Smith has a very nice book, which is early Royal Air Force, Royal Flying Corps at that time. This is always available, not hard to get. And then Units of the Royal Australian Air Force is a very nice little set. Try to get one in a box set. They're very difficult to find. I don't know why. Very, very difficult to find a complete set. Generally, they're ex-library. For World War I, you'll need a copy of The War in the Air. It's been reprinted. We have 4 or 5 sets of the original here, as you can see up here on the top, in mint condition. We collect them and put sets together. And is not a bad thing to have in your library. You will need a copy of the Australian Flying Corps by Cutlack. That comes in a number of editions. This one is 53. It's a reprint. For some reason, bugs love to eat these books. To find a good set of Bean's history of World War I, you have to be very lucky. Try to get them in the shipping case here. Try to get them in the shipping case if you can, but I've lost a lot of money buying without inspecting these sets of books, and they're pretty much can be quite trashy. As I said, the silverfish love to eat them. Flyers, I always like Cobby very much. When I first started collecting, I never could find a copy. Now we have about 10 copies here. Try and get one in the dust wrapper here, first edition. It's a very nice dust wrapper, not common, but they're available. But I do recommend, if you're going to collect, get the first edition, but also get the reprint that was done by Norman Clifford. Norman is still alive, and if you can find his son, he'll take these to his dad, he'll sign this. But this second edition is done with the original plates and the original manuscript, but it has a lot of the photographs of Cobby. It's well worth buying. We always have copies of this available. We have a special interest in Palestine. There's a lot of rare books about Australians in Palestine. Here's one of the more rare ones. I've never seen another copy, with Horse and Morse in Mesopotamia. So it's cavalry and Morse code and communications with the acid. I bring this up as an introduction We like Lawrence of Arabia. He was a nutcase, but he very interesting. There are whole bookshops in England that do nothing but Lawrence of Arabia. And we have most of his books in reasonable condition here. And one of the interesting things is you get to Aces and Kings by Sutherland. And he makes the comment, contains a chapter of 42 pages concerning Lawrence of Arabia. The author writes as follows: we of No. 1 Squadron, Australian Flying Corps, were at various times his aerial chauffeurs, his aerial lieutenants, his Arab impressors, so I can at least write of Lawrence of Arabia with some degree of first-hand knowledge. So if you're interested in Lawrence, be sure you have a nice copy of Aces and Kings. Between the wars, probably Joysticks and Fiddlesticks is fundamental. Unfortunately, this red binding does not survive. I've got a lot of books that my catalogers put in the box for salvos, and I always bring them out. To find a copy in the red cloth in this condition means there's a dust jacket somewhere that's protected it. Try and get a dust jacket with this book. It's fundamental for any historical study of between the wars from commercial flying. There are a number of books on our early trans-Pacific flights. Here's Kingford Smith and Ulm's book. Very nice. You don't need a dust jacket on this because the blue seems to survive pretty well. It's a very nice book cover. This is a little ephemeral. This is the Roth-Smith airplane race game. And there are 3 other copies in libraries, and we think this is the only one for sale. Of course, every time you say this is the only copy, that is exactly when you can expect to have 2 people the next day say, what about my copy? So the best way to find hidden treasures is to say that this is the only copy. This is a fun, I've played this game, never won. I crashed and burned, but it's a fun piece. I think you can't beat flying boats for the history of aviation in our territory. Between the wars, there's a number of women flyers. Any book by Amy Johnson is very good and very useful. We always have a number of her books. Jean Batten's books are interesting and worthwhile. We have a number of signed copies of her books. Between the wars, there's a whole area of collection of Arctic and Antarctic exploration. This is a book, Flying the Arctic, by George Wilkins. He also flew the Antarctic and is very interesting. Getting into World War II, we like TM. It's very funny to read. This is the journals, monthly journals that were published to help you to get started in your Air Force career. It tells you how to requisition a table, chairs, and desk for your squadron, and even gives you the requisition numbers. Qantas, there's a number of books in Qantas in World War II. So if you're a collector of Qantas, you'll get one of these, and then you'll get their historical books and also the fish books as the autobiographical. It gets a little tedious to read about the problems they had with the board of directors, but if you're a Qantas collector, you'll be happy to read about all the problems the flying fish had. Battle of Britain and Spitfire books, we get a lot of interest here. One of the favorite books we have is Sign for a Marlin, Testing the Spitfire by Henshaw. They're getting a little hard to find. Try to get one with a dust jacket. It's a nice dust jacket, and it's very well written. I would say 2/3 of the people that come into our shop are interested in Bomber Command and the Australian air crews. Everyone had a father or an uncle or even a grandfather who flew in Bomber Command. So the one we recommend for people getting started is the Bomber Command done by the Department of Veterans Affairs. Don't look for this in the Australian War Museum. You won't find it. This is in Veterans Affairs. We always keep 4 or 5 copies in the shop, and we sell 1 or 2 a week. I would say the most popular books on Bomber Command planes are Lancasters. We like Garbett's and Goulding's set, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 copies. And that's a nice set. They're hard to find, a complete set. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm using the kibitzers in the shop has noticed that I'm using the 5 volumes, all signed, by the way, copies to prop up my laptop computer. If you want to be depressed, get a set of Bomber Command losses by Chorley and just open it up at random anywhere. And read the history of all the planes that didn't return to base or return without a full crew. It's hard to get. There's a couple of these volumes that are hard to get. So to put together a complete set is not so easy. We have several in the shop and are probably one of the most interesting things I've read on World War II to understand the effect it had on flyers from Australia. The British and European theater of war was interesting, but there's a few books about the Burma air war, and they're quite interesting. You need to get, if you're interested in Burma, you need to get a copy of Wings of the Phoenix. We always have a few copies. And this is the official history of the Burma campaign, the air history of the Burma campaign. That's usually you can get it with a dust jacket. Then we go into the Pacific and Papua New Guinea theater. There's a number of books done by Australians. This could be another area of specialty for collectors. For the history of the RAAF in all theaters of war, you need to go to Gilson, Oders, and Harrington, and they're 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Their 4-volume set is fundamental. We always have 1 or 2 sets around. They're done in first editions and second edition. They were reprinted. If you're a collector, try to get all first editions with dust jackets. We generally don't buy them without the dust jackets because our collectors like the dust jackets and like nicer copies. Squadron histories are a nice thing. There are lots of them, especially the RAAF. This is one of the rarer ones. I've never seen, whoops. Until today, I haven't seen another copy. There'll be 3 or 4 that'll be shown to me tomorrow. But this is 455 Squadron, published during the war. It's quite rare, scarce. We'll be precise here. So this is a good thing. Good thing. If you have one, let me know. And then we're getting now to Australian fighter pilots. Number of back about 1980, a number of the World War II pilots published limited edition memoirs of their flying. These are just a few examples of these books. They weren't published. They were never printed in hardcover. They're all soft cover, which makes them a little bit difficult to collect. But I've seen soft cover books like this sell for $250 just because they're quite rare and hard to find. And this is just one example of Clive Caldwell, a book by Clyde Caldwell. Here's one by Macready, Airman's Story. Again, these are samples of books, interesting books by World War II pilots, RAAF pilots. Post-war, people that come in are very interested in Australian commercial aviation. So we're always selling books on Australian airlines. They're quite popular. And they're generally in limited editions. Here's one, just an example, Airliners in Australian Service. I'm looking at another book in the shop, the history of Australia's airlines, and all of the Qantas work would come into here. As I said, we're very interested in technical. We have technical manuals on most aircraft. We have hundreds and hundreds of things on Tiger Moths. If you need anything on the Tiger Moth, let us know. We have everything. We bought a collection of a pilot who flew a Tiger Moth from England down, and he was building Tiger Moths for years and years. So we have all the Tiger Moth repair and aviation manuals. So that's a summary of what we think are key books in different categories and different interesting genres that you should consider. We have two current catalogs. One is Lawrence of Arabia up at the upper right, and then we have our aviation history catalog that are out. We'll be happy to send anyone a copy that wants one. And let me say that any member of the society gets a 10% discount on any books they want. Just let us know. And if our website doesn't give you a discount, which it may not, just let us know and the money will be in your bank the next day. So thank you very much for allowing me to summarize some of the things that we've learned over 40 years of book dealing. And again, we'll be very happy to answer any questions. Again, on books, conditions, and rarity, as I said, we're not the experts. You're the experts on the history of the people and the flights that these books document. Thank you very much.
Thank you much. That was fascinating. It looks as though I'm not going to be in good order with my descendants because all my books have lost their dust jackets and they're all spilled over and been read in the rain and all sorts of things. Well, ladies and gentlemen, any questions, comments, or?
Well, the first thing that Marshall asked for was anybody who had a 455. And I do, but it doesn't have a dust jacket. And I found it in your catalogue and I was disappointed I didn't have one.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, well, they'll, if you wait long enough, it'll put your grandkids through school.
Yeah, looking at the price of some of the ones that I certainly do not have in my collection, indeed.
Marshall, can you stop your share so we can all see each other? I've got a full set of that units of the RAAF. I think I paid about $20 brand new. So we're getting rid of them. And it's-
You don't see any for sale anymore.
No. You can get it digitally too, of course. That's available somewhere online.
But I can see from the books behind you that you're not a digital guy.
Well, I am. I'm both.
When I ordered them, they screwed it up and they sent me 2 sets. So I sold the first set to another.
Another non-digital member. Nice collection behind you.
He's got a huge collection.
That's half of 3. So there's 6 times that.
We've been offered a collection of 1,500 books. That's a lot of books.
Mm.
Well, I reckon I've got 2.5.
That takes us about 2 years to catalog.
Yeah, it would.
Yes.
I actually run an Australian aviation bibliography, which you showed one earlier. I forgot the name of the guy who did it, but I did have a copy of his, and basically I built on that, and it's current to date if you'd be interested in a copy.
Absolutely interested in a copy.
Okay, it's digital, and I'll pick up your address off the website and send it to you.
Are you interested in printing that up in a hard copy?
It's such a movable object, really, isn't it? I mean, tomorrow there's something that you don't have in the printed copy. So I'm happy with digital, to be honest. The RAF have a copy.
Yeah, we'd be very interested in getting a copy. Thank you.
Okay, we'll do.
I'm interested in the value you put on some of these contemporary authors these days, like Michael Reach and Peter Fitzsimons and their books, which seem to be for the general, more general public rather. Have you got any particular comment on the proliferation of those sort of books?
But yes, some of these more common books, you can, if you're lucky, you can pick them up at a used bookshop just in their aviation, but sometimes you can't. If you're interested in those kinds of books, you go to eBay and try your luck to find them. But one of the things about our shop is, if you go to our shop, you're going to see lots of aviation books. You're not going to have to worry about general war books or travel books.
The Fitzsimons books serve their purpose in introducing people that don't know a damn thing about aeroplanes to aeroplanes, but really I haven't seen one that hasn't got factual holes and plain bad writing in it. But the thing that really annoys me is the way that he and similar authors take the subject and invent dialogue among the people concerned, which is usually completely, out of tone. The dialogue is in modern patterns and not 1930s patterns. Maybe I'm getting old and fussy. Yay.
Thank you all for inviting me.
Yes, that was very interesting. I learned a lot. I'm going to look after my books even better.
Please do. Otherwise, salvos for you.
I live in Queensland. I have a problem.
I look after my books like children.
Keep the silverfish away. Australia is a killer for bugs eating your books. Just be careful.
Thanks very much for joining us. Unfortunately, we won't see you till October because that looks like being our next Zoom meeting. Maybe September, but certainly October. But thanks to Peter for all his work in recording. Can I recommend the last recording from Queensland, the visit to the Warbird Centre. It's really brilliant. And keep well, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it immensely. I'm looking forward to your next meeting.